October 1943. The waters of the Atlantic were black, dense, motionless, and in the middle of the Philadelphia harbor a ship awaited its fate. It wasn't just any vessel. It was a promise of power, an obsession disguised as science.
The USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort that wasn't meant to fight, but to disappear. The men on board had no idea what they were about to witness. They were simply following orders. Orders that came from very high up.
At 11:05, the air changed color. An impossible green mist began to cover the deck. Compasses froze. The metal trembled as if it were breathing. And in a single instant, the ship vanished from the water.
Witnesses on land said the sea had swallowed the light, that the sound split in two as if something had torn through time itself. For a few seconds, only silence remained.
It didn't sink. It didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist.
And when it returned, not everyone was alive. Some were no longer human. During World War II, fear didn't just come from the enemy. It came from time itself. Every day counted. Every decision could twist the course of the world. And at some point, someone decided that science could do the impossible.
They didn't want to disappear from the map. They wanted to disappear from the eyes of God, to turn a ship into shadow, a body into a specter, to hide from radar and from creation itself.
They called it Project Rainbow, a military test driven by equations that even physicists barely understood. Electromagnetic waves, unified fields, words that sounded like science but smelled like heresy.
The sailors didn't know. They thought they were part of a simple stealth test, but no one explained that the experiment aimed to bend space itself, to bend reality.
The minds behind the project were as brilliant as they were dangerous. Einstein, Tesla, men who touched the edge of the universe and then went silent. Their formulas were left unfinished until someone decided to complete them by force.
Man became the architect of his own void, and the sea simply waited.
Aboard the USS Eldridge, the air felt heavier. Compasses quivered, needles spun aimlessly, and the men felt a hum beneath their feet, as if the ocean were breathing for the first time.
Dr. Reno watched the meters. They said the electromagnetic field was stable, but the sea is never stable. Nothing alive ever is.
At 11:05, the first pulse, a white spark ran across the turrets, and stretched to the sky. The sailors covered their eyes, though the light did not come from the sun.
The ship began to vanish from the keel upward, as if the steel were melting in silence. The water didn't boil. The sound shattered into fragments, and the bodies began to fade.
Some screamed that they could feel air inside their bodies. Others said the floor was moving beneath their skin. No one knew if they were floating or falling.
Reno shouted to shut everything down, but there were no controls left. Only a green light wrapping the ship and a vibration that wasn't electrical. It was alive.
Witnesses on shore said the ship turned transparent for a second. A shadow suspended in water. Then, nothing. Only sea.
In less than a blink, the USS Eldridge ceased to exist. No trace, no echo, no wave. The void closed over it as if it had never been there.
And in that fraction of time, something broke. Not the machine, the fabric, the thin border between the world of men and the abyss that watches it. Six minutes later, the sea began to tremble. A line of light cut through the water like a wound, and from the darkest corner of the harbor, the USS Eldridge returned.
But it was no longer the same ship. The steel plates seemed to breathe. The air around it shimmered, as if reality itself refused to touch it.
The first men to board couldn't comprehend what they saw. Bodies fused with metal, faces trapped in the walls, arms stretching from the hull, seeking help. It was as if the ship had tried to devour itself.
Some were still alive. Their eyes rolled aimlessly, pupils wide, skin melted into steel like wax. They screamed without sound, only a vibration, as if pain had lost its voice.
Dr. Reno tried to shut down the field, but the energy wouldn't dissolve. It was as though the ship didn't want to stay here. A living machine caught between two planes.
One sailor managed to move. His body was embedded up to his chest. It tried to pull him free, and what remained was only flesh and shadow. The metal had claimed him.
Some vanished before the others' eyes, dissolving into the air as if gravity had forgotten them. And when they returned, they no longer remembered who they were. They didn't even know if they were still alive.
They hadn't crossed time. They had crossed the limit. The point where matter blends with memory and life no longer belongs to the body.
The military report would call it a technical malfunction. But Reno's note spoke of something else. An echo, a resonance that kept humming beneath the ship's hull, as if the sea itself were answering back.
Man had touched the edge of the universe, and the universe had stared back.
Days later, the harbor calmed. The Navy cleaned the site, archived the reports, and swore silence. The USS Eldridge was sent to another base as if nothing had ever happened. But the sea remembered.
The survivors came back changed, their eyes no longer focused on the same horizon. Some said they heard a constant hum inside their skulls. Others saw green flashes every time they closed their eyes.
One crewman was found walking down a street, naked, memoryless, saying he had woken up inside the steel. Another vanished in front of his wife, as if the air had swallowed him, leaving only the glass he was holding.
It wasn't madness, it was the echo of an error that never faded. Each of them became a fracture, a weak point in the fabric of the world. And through those fractures, something kept watching.
Carl Allen, a witness, began sending letters. He claimed to have seen the Eldridge appear in another port, hundreds of kilometers away, surrounded by green fog, crewless. No one believed him. But every letter had the same coordinates, the same dates.
And when they tried to expose him, the letters stopped coming. The sender never existed.
Years later, a retired sailor confessed what no one dared to repeat, that he could still see shadows moving inside the ship, that he heard footsteps in the corridors, though the Eldridge was empty.
Maybe the men didn't die, maybe they simply remained suspended, trapped at the edge of two realities, waiting for someone to restart the field.
The government called it collateral effect, but some scientists believed something else, that the experiment had opened a fissure, a door that was never closed.
And when man opens a door to the unknown, it's not always him who crosses through.
The USS Eldridge was quietly decommissioned. No one ever spoke of the experiment again. The files were sealed, the names erased, and the ship vanished from record as if it had never existed. Yet every so often, someone claims to see it. A metallic silhouette floating in the mist, crewless, aimless, like an echo of what was never meant to return.
The government called it progress. History called it myth. But the universe does not forget. Every attempt to control what we don't understand leaves an open wound in time. And time always bleeds backward.
In the end, it wasn't a military experiment. It was a human one. The desire to bend reality, to peer beyond the mirror and come out unscathed.
Man didn't want to make a ship disappear. He wanted to erase his own limits, to blur the line that separates him from the divine. And in doing so, he discovered that this line was the only thing keeping him sane.
Since then, the sea has remained silent, but beneath its layers, something still moves, a vibration, a pulse, as if that field were still alive, waiting to be reactivated.
And if anyone ever dares to try again, it won't be science that answers. It will be the universe, reclaiming what is its own.
Because what disappears never truly leaves.
It simply learns to watch us from the other side.